Hello, everybody. How are you? I am Monisha and I'm back again with one another episode of Newcomers to Trailblazers. So, this person is amazing. I'm gonna give you an intro before we dive into that. But before we start this episode, I want to acknowledge that we are gathered in the city of Vancouver, which is the traditional ancestry land of Musqueam, Squamish, and Salil Watooth people. Okay, so now I'm going to read her introduction, but trust me, you are going to be awe inspired just by listening to her introduction. And we are going to have this amazing full episode with her. I am so excited. I am sure all of you are excited. I'm going to not be make her uncomfortable.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. But she's a HR superpower, and I have to tell you this. I remember texting you the first time on LinkedIn, and I connected with her and I texted her. It is so amazing to see a woman of color on the as the HR head. So yes, I have given a hint. She is the CHRO of City of Burnaby, and she's the first person of color to have that position. I'm so excited. Let's be honest. Work does not define a person. That's just one piece of the puzzle. She is a second generation Canadian immigrant and she has very overachieving kids, just like her. We will dive into it slowly. And before you picture Anita as this sunshine fleeing, stereotype conforming robot, she is much more than that. And let me assure you, she has embraced her authentic self after a big experience that happened in 2021. And we are going to touch upon that as well. So get ready to learn more about Anita's experiences, Anita's journey, Anita's life, and much, much, much more. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you so much, Manisha. I'm really excited to be here. And honestly, I'm thankful and honored and feel really privileged. So thank you.
Thank you. I am actually privileged having this person on the chair like this today. This is a very special day for me. And I am super excited, pumped for this episode.
I'm pumped too.
Yeah. Okay. So before we begin your journey, let's talk about your parents' journey. So when did your parents move and were they adults when they moved? Or did they move together? Or did they know Canada before they moved? Tell us that, spill us the tea.
Okay, I'll spill my tea. So it's a long story, but I'll try to keep it somewhat short. My dad came here in the late 1960s, and my mom came in the early 1970s. My dad actually has a really interesting story. So he was in India and probably not the best boy out there. So his parents had him working a little bit in the military while also going to school. And my dad says to me, he goes, "You won't believe this." He goes, "I was in India and a guy approaches me and says, 'Hey, do you want to come to Canada?'" And he thought that the flight was maybe about, 5 hours away. So he's like, "Yeah, no problem." So he literally packed his bags and got on a plane. Next thing he knows, he's in an entirely different country. And so dad ends up not in any province. He ends up in Quebec.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he ends up in Quebec. And, the conversation the guy had with dad was, come here, I can find you some good work, make some really good money. So dad ended up in Quebec with, I think he said he had about $10 in his pocket. And honestly, back then, I think $10 could go a little bit longer, but not a long ways. So he's in a country where he doesn't speak the language, and the language in that province is even more foreign.
Yeah.
And he said he recalls trying to find his way to some sort of transportation and get a hold of somebody. And he made his way to the bus station. And he actually slept there for a couple of days trying to figure out, what am I going to do? How do I get a hold of my family? Long story short is, out of the blue, he ended up running into another Indian fella that was driving the bus and said, "Hey, look, come with me. I'll get you on the bus and I'll get you to Calgary, where there is a little bit more of a population of Indian people that work on the railways. And we can get you a visa and get you going." So my dad hops on the bus, ends up in Calgary. And anyways, when he was in Calgary, they said you could get your visa. He ended up at a hotel and The interesting part was he ran into a woman there who was a Bindu, so somebody from his village. And luckily, she said to her husband, who was stamping the visas and in charge, said, "You take care of this guy. He's from my village." And long story short, they stamped his visa, and he ended up becoming a worker on the railways. And I think he established himself, worked in many different provinces along the railway. And later on, his parents called him and said, "You can't be in a country by yourself. You need to get married." So back then they didn't have emails and all that. So they mailed him a photo and said, "This is going to be your bride. You good with that?" And he responded, "Yes." And then they shipped my mom over on a plane. And as soon as she arrived, ended up at the courthouse and got married. Yeah. That was their story.
Wow, that is astonishing. Just to think, just imagine immigrants today, I know, and we have a concept of common law partner or a married person. And you realize that you are going to get your credentials done just before you come. You are getting your medical licensing done, your PCC, police verification done, and whatnot, right? Oh, especially your language exam done. You're doing all of this just to enter into the country, which has evolved. The process has evolved over the years. And this person who knew nothing about Canada or knew nothing about the cold weather,
Nothing.
or English or French or any other language, just blindly took a risk and then took a flight. Today we have a direct flight which is close to 17 hours from here to the land where her father is from.
Yeah, Bungay.
Where she is from. There is close to 18 hours of flight. And I am sure by the time your father traveled, there was not a single flight that came over. There must have been some layovers.
You know what? I didn't talk to him about that, but I did record. My dad passed away, so I did end up recording his message about his travels. But I'm going to go back and listen to them. Don't know about the layaways. I don't know if he mentioned it.
Okay, so he just took a flight and traveled, and it was the biggest risk of his life, and then moved from one country to another. This is a story that needs to be out there. This is the story which is so different from today's immigrant experience, but it is so valuable, the kind of work that they have done, the kind of hard work that they put in.
For sure.
Out of curiosity, when your mom moved, did she speak the language or did she know anything about Canada?
Yeah, my mom had a little bit more education. So she was educated from India and she had come down. But the language, again, for both of them, they had to pick up and learn because I don't believe it was such a push to learn English in India at that time. So, it was not like this generation where they're taking extensive English courses to really learn before they come. But I do recall my parents saying that it was difficult. They're working 2 jobs each and trying to, just create a family and have a foundation for a good life. So, they worked hard.
I believe that. I strongly believe that they worked hard. And the story, just listening to it and having, now that your father has passed away, I am sure if I had the chance to have ever met him, I would have really loved the conversation.
He was absolutely amazing.
I believe you completely, 100%. I'm sure he was an amazing person. Okay, let's move on to the next question. I'm going to check my notes here a little bit. Okay, so we spoke about your father's experience, your parents' experience. Let me speak about your experience. You're a second generation immigrant, right? It is not sunshine and roses, let's be honest. And how did you fit in? Did you try to fit in, especially with your brown skin? There are a lot of challenges that second generation immigrants face with their brown skin. And what did you do? How was your life growing up in school?
Yeah. So again, I was born in the 70s. So my experience would have been late 70s and early 80s as a child and
adolescent.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was difficult, and it's interesting because people weren't rude or not welcoming. It was not that. I think there was a lack of understanding of where I came from and kind of the upbringing I was having. So I think I was in a generation where it was confusing. my parents were new immigrants here to the country, trying to establish us and trying to really incorporate some of the cultures that they value and they believe into us. And we were trying to respect our parents and really embrace that culture, but at the same time divided because we were trying to fit into a society where everybody was Caucasian around us, and their values, their beliefs were quite different. And I do recall, now that I reflect, there was lots of times where I tried to fit in, and it was to the point where I did avoid the sun to try to keep my skin tone lighter, or I wore things that my parents would not necessarily want me to wear just so I could look and feel like the other kids. And it didn't seem wrong at that time. It seemed like the right thing to do. But now, as I'm an adult reflecting back, I really wish I could have embraced my authentic self and my family and the values, because I really feel it would have, kind of set that message a little bit earlier than later in my life. I don't regret what I've done because I think it's created who I am today, but I do wish I could have been able to share that message about being your authentic self, embracing your culture, and really appreciating who you are and where you come from. I do recall when it actually clicked into me was, as I got older, there's two situations that really made me think. I think the first situation was when I was younger. I worked in a grocery store, and I recall being a cashier, and an older, I believe it was a Caucasian lady that came through my checkout, had said to me, she gave me this really bizarre look and said, "I don't understand you. I don't understand your people." And I had never experienced that in my life. And I remember just finishing and checking the person out. And afterwards I went home and I was just thinking about this, thinking like, what is it about me? I think I speak clear English, what is it? And it just started twisting my thought about myself. And again, further making me manipulate who I am just to try to fit in. So I didn't have to deal with individuals making those comments. And then I think it was also later on in life, I realized that it was having an impact. It was when I got married and I had my children. My husband and I were taking our kids on a trip. And, my children love the sun. They would bathe in the sun all day long. And I remember trying to pull them out of the sun saying, what are you doing? Like, put on some sunscreen to get out of the sun. And my husband looks at me and said, "What are you doing? They're kids, they're trying to have fun." And it was in my mind that I didn't want them to endure that of not fitting in. So yeah, just really remember that. It was really about trying to fit in and, trying to be somebody you're not, or make my kids somebody they're not. And yeah.
I think even in India, like you rightly mentioned, brown skin is not very appreciated. There is this stereotype that a beautiful person is fairer. And I have also experienced that. I never played any sport because my parents didn't want me to look more brown than I already look.
Yeah.
But I am brown. I mean,
That's right.
I am brown. But while growing up, I did not realize that as well. Then I started growing up, and people around me, which are my extended family members, India, and it's very close knitted.
Yeah.
All family members come together. And they asked me every time they meet me, "Oh, you've gotten a little dark.
Yeah.
You've gotten a little dusky."
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, is that a wrong thing? Because as a child, you don't realize that's what you're trying to do.
That's right.
And even as I grew older into an adult, and comparatively my skin tone is on the fairer side in the range of brown, people have asked me, "Oh, you have a fairer skin. How come you're not in the cinema industry, like Bollywood?" I'm like, do you even understand what you're saying? How disrespectful that is.
Yeah.
But they don't realize it. For them, the standard of beauty is somewhere that starts with, the light brown or towards the fairer side. And I completely disagree.
I completely disagree. And actually, it's interesting. I think my daughter has been an inspiration to me on that, and my son, because they don't allow their skin to limit who they are. In fact, I know my daughter plays outdoor sports and she's in the sun constantly. Next week, we're going to be in Maryland, and, she's never once let that, stop her. And she is absolutely beautiful. I look at her each day and I don't look at the color of her skin. I look at how beautiful she is everywhere. And I love her to pieces. And I think we as individuals, we as Indians, and we as people need to embrace the beauty that everybody brings. It's not about the color of your skin. It's not about the color of your eyes. It's not the color of your hair. It's just your uniqueness and the different qualities you bring. And it makes me think of when I was younger, I had this boy. It was probably in my teenagers, and hopefully my husband doesn't kill me, but I'll share this. It's just between us. Okay. But I remember this guy saying to me, because I was always embarrassed of my nose, because a lot of us, South Asian individuals have a different shaped nose. And I would do this every day to try to make it straight. And this guy says to me, he goes, you're so beautiful. And I said, oh, thank you. And he says, I love your nose. And I was thinking, is that a joke? Or not?
Was it sarcasm or a sincerity? I know.
But no, he was dead serious. And he said, it's just the unique features that, you have. And I think about it now it's true, is everybody has unique qualities to them. Nobody's perfect, but I think that's what makes everybody so special, is the differences that we bring in. We need to embrace that. We don't need to manipulate who we are, the way we look. We need to just really embrace it and, echo that beauty out there. So if, you love your eyes, you love your hair, well, go with it. Yeah. Be who you are. And who cares what others think?
Yeah. Who cares what others think? Let me tell you, this is a golden statement. Sounds very silly and simple, but this is the policy for life. Who cares what others think? You be you. You do you.
You do you.
Yeah, very simple. We have spoken about your journey as a child. Your journey as an adult has been a slightly difficult one.
Yeah.
And you have experienced emotions that many humans go through, which is grief.
Yeah.
If you would like to share about your grief, feel comfortable in your own space. And what kind of grief did you have? And how did that change you as a person? The authentic self that you speak about today, did that factor into you becoming the real you today?
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting. My husband and I had this conversation because he said, you've always been you. And he said, people have always loved the way you are and who you are. But I think it was internally, I had a change. You might not see it externally, but internally I had a switch. So for me, as I have been quite fortunate, I've gone to school, I've had the opportunity to move up in my career, and quite successfully to those that see me. But I don't think I really had a true connect in being who I was and truly being a leader and inspiring others until, unfortunately, it was 2021 where I had 3 individuals in my life pass away. And it was during COVID time. It was my father, who really is my foundation of who I am and my values and my ethics, which is really hard. And, it was hard because I think for me is my dad was always the type of person that helped people out. He even housed a lot of people. Every time they immigrated to Canada, didn't have a place to stay, they would actually stay at our house. I remember sharing my bed with multiple people, and I thought it was so weird. But, now that I look back, he was just really trying to help people, paving the path, lifting them up, and doing that for them. And I think in 2021, a lot couldn't do that for him because it was COVID. It was very intimate, and I don't think people got to say the proper goodbye and thank you to him. So it was really, really hard, but a good reflection for me. And then later in the year was my first cousin, who I consider my nephew, because he's the age of my kids, and his parents are the age of us. So my mom and mommy. Ronan, he was one of the 3 hockey players that passed away in that horrific car accident in Surrey. That was a really hard one because I think I was so busy in life that I didn't get to spend as much time with him that I really wanted. But one of the key messages he was delivering was he was in the middle of filming a documentary on racism and inclusion in sports. It was released in the film festival. I believe it was not last year, the year before. But I think Ronan really opened up the eyes to me about how that's still out there. And, I thought it was amazing how his parents, Amar and Indra, also, encouraged him to do it. And he was frightful of doing it because he didn't want people thinking poor of him and doing it. So I think that was really eye-opening for me. And then the last, I guess, the straw was my grandpa passed away exactly a month later, who was, I think, really the pillar of our family, who, did a lot of work at the temples and gave back to the community. And these were three really important people in my life. And I think at that point, I really had a switch where I thought, look, I'm really fortunate with everything I've had, but I think that I need to really start embracing who I am and really encouraging others to, give back and be who they are in the community. So what I noticed was at that point when I started being myself and it wasn't really about me, and it was really trying to create that space for others, is it opened up more doors for me. And what I do notice is it's changed my leadership. Like my leadership vision is it's really about lifting others up, paving that path and creating that space so others can grow. And I talk a lot about being your authentic self because I feel, you can grow as an individual and, achieve things, but only when you can be yourself is when you're going to see that satisfaction both ways. And maybe that is a bit selfish, but I think, if you can be yourself, you're going to see that value. And what I also notice the flip way is I have my staff, and I'll tell you, any one of them will step up for me because it's not because I demand it. It's because I give them the space to be who they are, and I bring them along and I lift them up. And I think that's really what 2021 did for me, is it opened up my eyes. It was really hard, but it made me realize that life is really too short and you just need to be yourself, embrace who you are, and respect others.
Every person experiences change in their own way, and transformation happens to everybody in their late 30s, late 40s, and their transformation is different in different decades that they live. Some transformation happens when they fall in love. Some transformation happens when they separate or people get divorced. Some transformation happens when they lose people and they are experiencing grief. And some transformation happens when they grow older and their kids, if they have, how learning through their kids' experiences. Everybody has a time and a place and and a and a decade where they transform, and their transformation is experienced in different ways. Since we have spoken about grief, what kind of mental health transformation did you experience? Would you like to talk about it?
Yeah, I think for me, everybody grieves in different ways. And that's really important to remember, is everybody grieves in different ways in their emotions, the way they react. I think for me, my first part was just I needed space for myself to have that transformation and understanding of what I was going through. But I think for me, a huge part of it was my daughter Saya, my son Jaden, my husband Sanjeev, also going by the name of Roger, just really being there for me. And then also, my brothers and my sister, just really being there for me, and my mom. I think that's what helped me. I wasn't one, although I encourage people to do EFAP, seek help, because it's really important. For me at that moment in time, it was really about embracing my own family and, stepping back and taking in that stuff that I hadn't had a chance to do for a long time, because I was so focused on this end goal of where I needed to be, where I didn't really appreciate what I had and who I had around me. And I think, it was really about self-healing through having those individuals around me and really grounding myself again. And I think, if anybody ever goes through that grief and multiple layers of grief, is recognize that it's okay. It's really okay. You're human. Crying is okay. Getting help is okay. Talking to your families is okay. I think that's what I did during that time. And I encourage people to take the time to heal. Yeah. It's not a race.
It is. It's not a race. Bereavement can, like you mentioned, it can be different for different people. And everybody processes grief differently. And when they process, some people show their anger and frustration out. Yeah. Some people put themselves in a box and then they just don't want to talk about it. Yeah. And some people are like, I am going to seek for help and I am going to find places that gives counseling, grieving services and things like that. Whoever you are, whatever your way of grieving is, whatever you prefer to do it in your own pace, do it in your own way. But remember, it is okay to grieve. It is okay to accept that grief is part of the process for you to develop, understand yourself a little better and grow as a person. So thank you so much for
I'm
sharing.
going to add something on to that, especially for our Asian communities. I want to add this on because we tend to be really reserved and we feel that it's a sign of weakness. We seek it. But what I'm going to encourage is these supports that we have out there, like your EFAPs, 211, all those different helplines, use them. Yeah. That's what Canada provides, and there's studies behind that those supports can really be valuable. So, if I can send a message out to anybody who is suffering, is reach out. Yeah. Reach out, get some help. You're not in it by yourself. And, others have gone through very similar or your situation's unique, but people have gone through grief or difficult times in their lives. So I encourage people just to use it, and don't think just because you're from another community that you're exempt. You're not. Everybody's got emotions.
Everybody's got emotions, and it is okay to feel them. Yeah. It is okay to be sad. It's okay to be frustrated. It is okay to realize that you're going through those emotions and address those emotions, like you rightly said. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. We have spoken about how your childhood was, how you experienced grief as an adult, and how your father's journey was. Let's move on to the next generation. Like I mentioned in the introduction, she has overachieving kids. So she has overachieving kids. And I remember seeing this amazing LinkedIn post about your daughters flying everywhere. And tell us about it. Tell us about it.
Well, actually, I want to recognize my son too.
Yes, that too.
I've got a son named Bhandari, and actually, when Roger and I named Jaden, it was Jadin, but it's Jaden if you pronounce it here. Mm-hmm. Jaden is also an athlete. He's played academy hockey, and he's had his own struggles. Jaden was a sick kid when he was younger. Mm-hmm. He had a chronic illness, which we dealt with through Children's Hospital. Mm-hmm. And he overcame his barriers and kept pushing his boundaries, although he was later in that development period. And right now he's probably one of the most amazing, giving, thoughtful kids I could ever imagine. And I love him to pieces. So I just really want to recognize him as well, because his sister gets a lot of media time, and I think it's important to recognize him as well. My daughter, Saya, she is a lacrosse player. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you, I can't take credit for any of the kids because I was not an athlete. Mm-hmm. In fact, I remember playing softball when I was younger, and I was really bad. I'd encourage myself when I was that bad because nobody else was cheering me on. So definitely not in my genes. Okay. But so my daughter, Saya, she plays lacrosse. She plays for Team BC. Mm-hmm. And she just more recently got a Division I scholarship to play in Virginia. And it was interesting because my daughter had this interesting journey, same as my son, where they did deal with racism and a sense of not belonging in their sports. And both kids have been able to overcome that. And my daughter's was really interesting because there was a point where, even though she was excelling in her sport, she was thinking about not doing it anymore because she literally did not see herself in that field with other kids. So very similar is, the skin tone, the cultural norms, all that, and even belonging, like where they chat about certain things, and there's just no connection. And she questioned, her wanting to be part of that, and she overcame it. And one of the discussions we have with our kids is, you need to enjoy what you do, and when you stop enjoying it, it isn't for you. So rather than having a mentality of going in there about trying to fit in or this norm of what it's supposed to be like, focusing on yourself, do the best you can and really, really enjoy doing it. And the rest will come naturally. And that's what happened with my daughter. And she's really excited. And she got accepted into pre-med, which is really exciting. It's a pre-med degree. And just super, super proud of both kids. And I think the other part of it, I got to give credit to my husband, is Roger or Sanjeev. He's just really been encouraging, and he pushes them. So I'm the soft one, and he's the one who says, "Oh, well, if you're going to get there, you need to work for it." So he pushes them to, continue to develop themselves. So very thankful.
That is really amazing. And yes, parenting can be very difficult. I'm not the one to comment on it because I'm not a human parent yet or want to. But the idea of parenting in itself is very complicated.
Yes.
Extremely complicated.
Yeah, very complicated. I don't think there's an instruction book for it. And I know when, you first have your children, they're take these classes and you'll learn. No, I really think everybody's story is very different. And you as parents just really need to be open. And, if I could give advice to the South Asian community or any diverse community, is you are in a different country. And it's important to recognize that your children might be in a divide in their brains of, what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable. And we as parents sometimes get embarrassed, or we try saying you need to be like this, but you can't. I think what you need to do is support your kids through this journey, provide them the foundation of being good, respectful people, and the rest will come naturally. And you're going to have your bumps, you're going to have, your obstacles along the way, but just be a supportive parent and don't try to make them something they're not or fit into a box that they're not meant to. Everybody is meant to, have your own branches and grow. So I would really encourage that, especially with our community, is a lot of times we get embarrassed and we don't want our kids to do certain things, or we hide it or whatever. Don't. Be proud of your kids. Always be proud of your kids, stand behind your kids and support them. That's my piece of advice.
Yeah, that's actually, I was watching this series just yesterday, which is called Under the Bridge, which is available on Disney Plus. I am not collaborating with Disney Plus. I'm not getting paid for it. This is not a paid promotion. But I remember watching this series, which talks about a second generation immigrant female kid living in Victoria, Saanich. Yeah. And then the kind of cultural disassociation she feels as a second generation immigrant, and how she tries to embody herself as a different human being and tries to fit into the cultural appropriation of Caucasian cultures. And as a teenager, that's a different story altogether. Being a teenager is so hard, so hard. And how she understands it, and what kind of challenges she faces. When you mention all these, that reminds me that, hey, in this, immigrant parents are somehow not educated to understand that there are different cultural appropriations. You have your own culture, there is a culture outside. Finding that balance is so hard.
It's so hard. But one of the things, and hopefully I'm not giving the wrong messages, I also believe don't lose your own roots. Like always, and I wish I would have embraced this earlier on with my kids, but and they want to know more about their culture, but it's important not to lose your roots, but still encourage to feed them other things.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is bring in more, but don't lose your roots.
Yeah. Bring in more, but don't lose your roots. Takeaway point.
Sure.
So here we are with part 1. I know this was long and we had a long episode. So we are splitting this into 2 parts. So our part 1 is uploaded today. We are going to sign off. And then there is going to be a part 2 that is coming out next Tuesday. And you will keep a watch out. Okay. If you are a person who likes to listen, we are available on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, YouTube Audio as well, and Spotify. And if you are a person who likes to watch it and learn from it, we are available on YouTube video as well. If you are a person who faces challenges with language, no problem at all. We have subtitles available for you. And if you need translation, please put it out on the comment, and we will find a way to translate it for you. So here we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Subscribe and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. We are available everywhere. I am going to put my LinkedIn profile on the description. I'm going to put Anita's LinkedIn profile on the description. And thank you so much once again for sharing all these information.
Honestly, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you.